Good morning, YouTube. So about 7 years ago, I had done a little bit of geocaching using my bike GPS. I have a Garmin Edge 800 bike computer. It has mapping features and routing and things like that. So with geocaching, you have these waypoints or geocaches that are GPS locations. Geocaching users create these geocaches, so they hide a little container out in this case it's up in the coastal hills, up in the woods, and they give it a name, a location. You can find out various things about that, so you can click on it. Here's the location, there's a map showing where it is, and then you have people that have found it or haven't found it put their notes in there. You've got a little description, things like that. If you have a geocaching.com membership, you can download this GPX file, which has all this data in it. I've loaded that into my mobile device, but I want to get this onto my bike computer because it's a lot easier to see where you're going on the bike computer because it's on the bike, it's mounted on the handlebars. You can get into the local area, and then I can say find the nearest cache, and it will tell me how far it is, what direction. When I get close, it'll tell me right where to stop on the trail. In the past, they used to use a .loc or a location file. Now geocaching has a GPX file, and normally you would just download that, and then you would come over here. This is your Garmin computer. You plug in the USB cable and it mounts the Garmin memory as a file. And the way you would do that is you would come over here into new files, and what the idea is, you put your GPX files or whatever files. This was the one I did in 2011, and I'll show you how I generated this file in a bit. So these are the files that I downloaded in the area that I'm going to. So I downloaded these yesterday. So I had a bunch of GPX files, and I tried putting them on the Garmin, but I'm still getting the same problem that I ran into back in 2011. And the problem is these GPX files, in fact, if we load them up here, this is Notepad++. This is what the GPX file looks like. It's basically an XML file, but they add all of this additional information in there. The comments, lots and lots of other stuff besides just a latitude and a longitude and a name. So the problem with the way Garmin works with these, you're supposed to put those files in your new files folder, and then when you next turn on your GPS, Garmin takes all of the files in this new files folder and looks at them all. And if they're valid files, it converts them into waypoint data. But if they're invalid files, they just delete it. That's what's happening with these. I tried taking all of these files, putting them in the new files folder, and I did this last night, and you can see they're not there. So I turned on the GPS, goes through all those files and says, well, nothing interesting here, and it considers all that additional data as errors. Technically, the way they're supposed to handle it is they're supposed to just ignore things that they don't understand, but Garmin seems to take the other approach that if they don't understand something, obviously the file's bad, and so they delete it. So let me show you what I did back in 2011. So here's my post. Actually, this was from a post I did in 2013. There's this program out there called GPS Babel, and I use this command here, and what it does, you loaded that file in, you gave it the GPX output format, and then you did this no GC option. So this no GC says no geocaching data. So delete everything that's related to geocaching aside from just the raw coordinates and the name, and then output it as this geocaching.gpx. And in fact, I did that with GPS Babel here. I did a GPS Babel. I loaded one of these GPX files. They don't seem to have the option anymore, at least in their GUI, to do this no GC. So I got this GDB file, which is a Garmin database. Now I haven't tried that one yet, but what I figured I would actually try as a little more direct method is just go into Garmin Basecamp, which is their mapping application, and I can just go over here and import into my collection, and I had just done that file there. Let's pick up the rest of them here, see if it'll handle multiple ones. I did this one earlier just to see if it works, and boom, right there it pulls all these files in. Now let's see if I can go here, and what I want to do, I've got my GPS plugged in, so I want to go up here, send data to selected device, so I'm going to send them over to the GPS. Oh, okay, so that's what it does. So now it's created this waypoints.fit file. That means I only have to do one upload. So what I'm going to do is I'll unmount the Garmin, disconnect it from the PC, and then I'm going to turn it on and see if these waypoints get loaded into the Garmin.
Okay, kind of hard to get a view here, but let's see. This is the Garmin screen. I'm going to go to locations, so right there, and let's see. Yeah, so here I think these are the ones. I guess they're loaded. Yeah, these are in distance, so I think this was one of them. Yeah, so I think that's going to work. Yeah, it's loaded all those in. So that's the way to do it, is you download all the GPX files from geocaching that you want. So you can see these are all about 10 miles away. There's the cave I went to a couple years ago, and that worked really well. Put the waypoint for that cave, and then you just ride along with your GPS on and tell it to find that. But yeah, if you hit that go button, it will take you right there, tell you how far it is. And what I'll do is I'm going to head up there later this afternoon, and when I get into the area close to one of these geocache locations, I'm going to pick one and see if we can find it. And yeah, the reason I was doing that is GeoCaching just sent me one of their trackable devices here. So it's called Discover the Forest. So I've got to go log in and activate this trackable. And then I'm going to be putting this thing in one of those geocaches. So I've got to find one that's big enough to put this in. Sometimes the geocaches are like little film canisters, or tiny little things, micro caches I think they call them. So I've got to find one that is big enough to put this in, and then I'll be putting that in there later today. So yeah, I gotta go log in and update this. So I've got the app on my phone, and then I need to get this thing activated, and then we'll be able to check on it. I guess you can then follow this thing around. So when somebody else picks this up, they log this device into their account. So if somebody else picks this up out of the geocache and then puts it in some other place, and you can follow this thing all over the place. So this is the first one I've done of these. I got this guy loaded, so this guy will help me find the geocache. That's why I wanted to pick about a dozen geocaches, just so that, number one, I can find one, because sometimes they're really hard to find, and I don't particularly want to spend all afternoon traipsing around through the poison oak looking for one of these if it's not easy to find. And then the other problem is you find one and it's, some micro canister that I can't put that into. So I figure I would get about a dozen locations. I'll find the first one that'll fit in, and we'll go from there.